So we have a 13-game preview this morning because we have 13 games in the NHL tonight. That's how it works. And it should be interesting to see how things go tonight because we are into that stage where we're a little bit past the quarter mark for most teams. And this is where general managers should be looking to make changes if they need to. This is where teams that have flaws, either if it's something behind the bench, you fix behind the bench. If it's something on the ice, you got to fix what's going on the ice. New Jersey waiving Schneider was step one in that for New Jersey, and we'll see. Well, Louis Domingue being acquired in a trade was step one, and then the waiving of Schneider was the next step. But we'll see if other teams start taking steps as well to turn things around after a start that's slower than was expected. So first off tonight, we've got Minnesota in against Buffalo. Now there's going to be a bunch of games starting at 4 o'clock my time Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern, and Minnesota-Buffalo is one of them. Minnesota's 7-11-2, Buffalo's 10-7-3. But when you look at the records over the first 2 months of the year, they're different. Minnesota's 4-9 in October, 3-2-2 in November. So they're technically above 500 in November. Above 500 meaning they've won more than they've lost in regulation. Notice it's not one more in regulation than they've lost in regulation. It's just how many did you lose in regulation? How many did you win overall? That's your 500 mark. Now, for Buffalo, they were 9-2-2 in October. They've been 1-5-1 in November. That's not great. And of course, when you think about it, that one November win was over Ottawa, who, while giving it their best, they aren't really a great team on the road, and so we'll see whether or not Buffalo can beat a team that's also not very good on the road in Minnesota. Now, with scoring today, what I did was I went, all right, so on these teams, how many guys have 5 goals or more? That's all I did. And ranked them by points, by how many goals they had. So, Eric Staal, 6 goals, 8 assists, 14 points. Zach Parise, 6 goals, 3 assists. Jason Zucker has 5 goals, 7 assists for 12 points. Brad Hunt, 5 goals, 5 assists for 10 points. So that's 4 for Minnesota. On the Buffalo side, it's also 4. Jack Eichel, 13 goals, 11 assists, 24 points. Sam Reinhart, 8 goals, 9 assists, 17 points. Jeff Skinner, 8 goals, 5 assists, 13 points. And it's worthy of note, too, that Skinner now is on pace for about 30 goals this year, and that's about his average for his career. Olofsson, 7 goals, 7 assists, 14 points. Of course, he being a rookie and hoping to stay on that pace for a 28-goal season, but keep in mind, 6 of those 7 goals were scored early. So we'll see whether or not he continues to have issues or if this is just the way it works with him in his rookie year, and he turns things around pretty quick here. At least from a goal-scoring perspective. He's still getting the odd point here and there. All right, moving along. Philly in against the Florida Panthers. The Flyers have had an amazing month of November, and you know what? Florida's had a pretty good month of November as well. Florida needs to start winning in regulation, is where the issue is. They have, I believe it's 6 in regulation, 7 in regulation and overtime. They're 10-5-5, whereas Philadelphia's 10-6-4. Now, in the month of October, Philadelphia 5-5-1, November 5-1-3. On the Florida side, they were 6-3-4 in October, 4-2-1 in November. So, Florida looking for a win at home tonight against a Flyers team that has been pretty darn good in the month of November thus far. Now, again, same thing, 5 goals or more. And we're seeing how many guys they have with that many. Lindblom has 9 goals, 7 assists for Philly, 16 points. Konechny, 8 goals, 11 assists, 19 points. Sean Couturier, 6 goals, 9 assists, 15 points. Claude Giroux, 5 goals, 8 assists, 13 points. On the Florida side, Dadonov, 10 goals, 8 assists, 18 points. And Dadonov at 10 goals, very quietly gotten there, hasn't he? Huberdeau, 9 goals, 18 assists. Hoffman, 8 goals, 7 assists. Connolly, 7 goals, 6 assists. Barkov, 6 goals, 19 assists for 25 points. He's on pace for 100. And Frankie Vetrano, 6 goals, 3 assists. Although it feels like all of them are empty netters. I know they're not, but it feels like it. So yeah, that's 6. 6 guys for Florida with 5 or more goals. That's not too bad. And they're going to need that scoring depth tonight against a Philly team that, yeah, I mean, if Giroux and Couturier can really get things going consistently, the Flyers should be able to stay in that playoff spot. The interesting thing is, of course, both of these teams currently in playoff spots, and they were not in the playoffs last year. So we'll see whether or not they can hold that. Moving along. Boston. The Boston Bruins in against the New Jersey Devils. This is one of those ones that I could consider throwing an Akbar magnet onto, because I do see it kind of as a trap. That being said, I think the 12-3-5 Boston Bruins are well aware they're not playing very well right now. And they're in against the New Jersey Devils, who are 7-8-4, and are actually outplaying them over the last couple of weeks. October, Boston was 9-1-2, in November 3-2-3. So Boston's won 3, and they've lost 5. If you include the overtime losses as regular losses, they've only won 3 out of 8. Whereas on the New Jersey side, they were 2-5-3 in October, 5-3-1 in November. So for New Jersey, November's been a pretty good month. Now, scoring-wise, both of them are lacking. Honestly, with depth, with scoring. Pastrnak, 17 goals, 15 assists, 32 points. Marchand, 13 goals, 19 assists, 32 points. Bergeron, 8 goals, 11 assists, 19 points. Nobody else with 5 goals. So that's 3. And it's the first line. It's exactly what people would expect. Which, on the surface, isn't great. That's not something that Boston wants to be dealing with, because, again, you don't want it to feel like, well, if you shut down their first line, they're done. That's it. Now, on the New Jersey side, Palmieri has 7 goals, 5 assists. Gusev, 5 goals, 2 assists. And, of course, the scoring for New Jersey has been an issue all season. So it's not really a surprise there's only 2 guys in New Jersey that have 5 or more goals. They've been looking for goals all year. And when you're looking for goals, and you're not keeping the puck out of your net either, that's a recipe for a complete and total disaster. And it's amazing that New Jersey's 7-8-4 when you consider those 2 factors. So if New Jersey can get a couple of goals here and there from some other guys, and if the goaltending does get better, with Schneider being sent down and Domingue being in net, and even if Domingue just puts up, say, a 900 save percentage, that's better than what they've been getting with Schneider by 48 points. So that's just for perspective, that's where we'd be at. And there are a couple of games I could think of off the top of my head they would have won with goaltending that was just 900. All right, moving along. Islanders in against Pittsburgh. The Islanders are 14-3-1. They've been on a mission. And Pittsburgh, 11-7-2, coming off of that embarrassingly good win against Toronto. And whether they were that good or Toronto was that bad, the answer is probably kind of both. Now, in October, the Islanders were 8-3. Great month. We'll see what they can do in November. Well, in November, they're 6-0-1 so far. On the Pittsburgh side, they were 8-5 in October. They've been 3-2-2 in November. So this is a big game for Pittsburgh. They want to keep their sights on the Islanders and keep them close. And prove that without Sidney Crosby, they can still do this. I would probably put my money on the Islanders. And when you look at their scoring depth, you look at players with 5 or more goals, you can see how difficult it is to stop them. There's no one guy that you can look at and say, well, if we stop him, they're done. Barzal, 9 goals, 8 assists for 17 points. Brassard, 6 goals, 7 assists. He's been fantastic. Considering how much they paid for him, he's been good. Bailey, 6 goals, 7 assists. Beauvillier, 6 goals, 6 assists. And Lee with 5 goals and 5 assists. On the Pittsburgh side, Jake Gensel, 9 goals, 17 assists. 9 goals, 7 assists for 16 points. McCann, 7 goals, 5 assists. Rust, 6 goals and 4 assists. He's been really good when he's played. Crosby, 5 goals, 12 assists. Hornquist, 5 goals, 5 assists. Cahoon, 5 goals, 5 assists. So if you compare the 6 here, 5 here, to the 2 and the 3 on this game, you can see that there's a lot more depth to worry about here. Even though Hornquist is out, Crosby's out. So that's worthy of note, but I would also note that if Malkin had played the entire season, he would be in this list as well. So there's that to point out. Pittsburgh has a lot of scoring depth, more than they get credit for. And the Islanders are a better team than they get credit for as well. Now, I have to change boards. And we have one last game that also starts at 4 o'clock my time, 7 o'clock Eastern, as that whole first board did. Montreal in against Columbus. Here we go. Montreal's 11-5-4. Columbus is 7-8-4. Now, they have the same record as New Jersey, but how they got there is a little different. On the Montreal side first, October they were 7-4-2, and in November they've been 4-1-2. So they've been very good in both months. On the Columbus side, October 5-5-2, not bad. November a little bit more of a struggle, 2-3-2. So they're struggling in November. It feels like New Jersey's getting better in November. Now they have the exact same record. They're in the same division. We'll see how things turn out tonight. Now on the Montreal side, there's a lot of depth here, but one of these guys on this list, of course, is going to be out for the next 8 weeks. Gallagher's got 9 goals and 7 assists to lead the team in goals. Tatar, 7 goals, 13 assists for 20 points. Jonathan Drouin, he's the one that's going to be out for a while, 7 goals and 8 assists. Shea Weber, 6 goals, 11 assists, has been a fantastic story. I've talked a lot about the Norris Trophy and it going to John Carlson, and I still think that happens. You know what? Weber would be one of the 3 finalists, I think, if the voting was right now. Dano, 6 goals, 9 assists. Armia, 6 goals, 4 assists. And Suzuki, 5 goals and 4 assists for the Montreal Canadiens. On the Columbus side, two players. Dubois with 7 goals, 5 assists. Werenski, 6 goals, 4 assists. Nobody else with 5 goals. Goal scoring has been a problem for Columbus. And that's alarming because you've got Montreal coming in who have the best goalie in Montreal Canadiens fans' minds in the entire league, maybe the world, and Carey Price. I'm not going to argue about that right now. It's not really worth it. The point is they have an excellent goaltender. They have solid defense, and they can score goals. Whereas Columbus, the defense is good. The goaltending, I think, has been better than expected for the most part. However, their scoring has been an issue. So that's why they haven't been able to win very many games. And they'll look to change that tonight against a Montreal team that should be very motivated to keep this pace up and to track down the Bruins. That's kind of where Montreal should be looking right now, is looking above them rather than worrying about anybody behind them. You've got a record like this, you say, you know what, we're just going to truck along and try to catch Boston. That's what they should be doing. All right, next up. So starting at 4:30 Pacific and 7:30 Eastern, a game you guys can't dare miss. The 8-11-1 Ottawa Senators in against the 7-12-1 Detroit Red Wings. And I really can't build this one up. Ottawa's road record isn't very good. And Detroit hasn't been very good throughout the season. However, we'll get into this. In October, the Senators 3-7-1. In November, 5-4 so far. We'll see how they do on this road trip. On the Detroit side, in October, 4-8-1. In November, 3-4-2. So they've won 3 and lost 6 so far this month. Now, scoring depth, Jean-Gabriel Pageau is the story for Ottawa. 11 goals, 4 assists, 15 points. Duclair, 7 goals, 3 assists. Nemesnikov, 6 goals, 6 assists for 12 points. Brady Tkachuk, 6 goals, 5 assists, 11 points. Bit of a sophomore slump going on with Tkachuk. Ennis, 5 goals and 4 assists as well. On the Detroit side, Mantha, 11 goals, 10 assists. Bertuzzi, 8 goals and 12 assists. Larkin, 6 goals, 10 assists. And Athanasiou has got up to 5 goals now, 5 goals and 6 assists. The scoring's coming for him. I would think 30 goals should be reachable for him by the time the season's over. And yeah, Mantha should get there as well. Now, what's interesting is you've got 5 players right now for Ottawa who are on pace for 20 goals. That is a solid number considering coming into this season, they would have been the pick by most people to have maybe 1 or maybe 2. They and Arizona probably. And yeah, the scoring has been there. Now, if Nilsson's able to go in and steal a game in Detroit, that's not going to shock a lot of people. But if they start to turn their road record around, if they go to 6-4 for the month of November, at what point do we start hearing about Ottawa toying with the idea of maybe adding something? Like, if their record does improve, and if they get up to, let's just say they get to like 11-11-1, they go on a 3-game winning streak. Does Dorian say, maybe we'll add a little bit of salary and try to make a run out of this, or do they stick to this plan and no matter what? That's the question I would have about that one. But Detroit will do their best to stop this tonight. All right, next up. Tampa is in against St. Louis. This one starts at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific, as things are going to get really crazy bonkers busy when it comes to what's going on with the world of hockey. So when I do the reviews tonight, keep that in mind. Because on busy nights like this, I always see people saying, I can't believe you didn't mention this. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't see it. Can't believe you didn't mention this. Because there were 8 games on at the same time, and I write notes about what I see. That's the thing with the notes. The notes, it's what I see. And I don't care if it's team I cheer for or don't. I just watch wherever the games are close, especially late. And I take the notes that are of what I see. Because if I was trying to take notes based off of, let's just say it was off of a condensed game. And then people say, well, watch the condensed game. Yeah, if there's 13 of them, that's like an hour and a half of condensed games about. And then I'm just writing notes on what everybody else has seen in the condensed game. Part of what I try to do with the notes is give a feel for each game and how it's going from what I see. So like momentum shifts, stuff like that. You may not get when you watch a highlight package. So that's kind of what I do. And Tampa and St. Louis, this should be a very interesting one. Tampa's 9-6-2. Whereas the Blues are 12-4-5. Now, yes, we've wanted more from Tampa, but 6-4-2 in October, and they're 3-2 in November thus far. So if they beat St. Louis in St. Louis tonight, they go to 4-2 in the month of November. That's not bad. Now, St. Louis will do everything they can to stop them. They had a 7-3-3 record in October, and in November, 5-1-2. It's been an excellent start to the season for St. Louis, and you get the feeling like we haven't seen their best yet. We started seeing it during that winning streak towards the end of it. And, again, an 82-game schedule is a grind. And when your team just went to the Stanley Cup final, I guarantee there are guys in that locker room that are still hurting from that Stanley Cup finals run that didn't have a very long summer, which is part of the reason why a cup hangover can happen. Now, on the scoring side of things, Stamkos, 7 goals, 13 assists for Tampa. Kucherov, 6 goals, 12 assists. Palat, 6 goals and 4 assists. Shattenkirk, 5 goals, 10 assists. Killorn, 5 goals, 7 assists. Gord, 5 goals, 6 assists. So 6 guys with 5 or more goals. Scoring has not been a problem for Tampa Bay, and they've only played 17 games, unlike some that have played 20, 21, or 22 so far this year. And for them, I think they want to see better numbers from Vasilevsky. This will be a good test tonight. On the St. Louis side, Schenn, 11 goals, 7 assists. Perron, 8 goals and 11 assists. Pietrangelo, 6 goals, 11 assists. Ryan O'Reilly with 5 goals, 14 assists. And Sammy Blais, 5 goals, 3 assists. His scoring, if he scores 20 goals this year, that's a victory for Blais and for the Blues. So we'll see whether or not he can keep that pace up. But right now, things look pretty good for Sammy Blais, and they honestly look pretty good for the Blues as well. If they keep playing the way they've been playing, I don't see any reason they can't win that division. That division hasn't been as tough as it looked on the surface at the start of the season, and we'll see if it toughens up. And by toughening up, I mean Winnipeg and Colorado push, and then you've got Nashville that should push back as well. Moving along, Nashville and Winnipeg. So this one starts as well at the same time as St. Louis and Tampa. So the Central Division gets things going pretty well at 5 o'clock my time. All right. Now, Winnipeg is 12-8-1, and Nashville's 9-7-3. So Nashville's been having some struggles. This is a home game. They've got to turn things around at home. Winnipeg 6-7 in October. They're 6-1-1 in November. Whereas Nashville was 8-3-2 in October, 1-4-1 in November. So 1 win and 6 for the Nashville Predators. Now, scoring depth-wise, Nashville has more scoring depth than almost everybody else. But Winnipeg, it's not bad. Ehlers, 9 goals, 7 assists. I've been very impressed with him this season. Even while he hasn't been scoring as well, I've been impressed with this game. Mark Scheifele, 8 goals, 12 assists. Connor, 7 goals, 9 assists. Wheeler, 5 goals and 7 assists. Again, his points are kind of low this year. Perreault, 5 goals and 2 assists for the Jets. On the Nashville side, Forsberg, 9 goals, 6 assists. Bonino, 8 goals and 5 assists. Yossi, 7 goals, 13 assists. He has been fantastic. Arvidsson, 6 goals, 7 assists. Yarncroke, 6 goals, 6 assists. Duchesne, 5 goals and 11 assists for 16 points. And Colton Sissons, 5 goals and 11 assists. So there's a lot of depth in Nashville. And it's been a matter of, in 2 games in 2 weeks, their goaltending just hasn't been a factor at all. And that's not a positive. Where Rene and Saros, it didn't seem to matter who was in net. So we'll see if they can get a really good defensive effort. Because Winnipeg can score. We can talk about their blue line and some issues there because there are some issues with their blue line. But this team can score goals. So it's going to be a good test for Nashville to see whether or not they can turn things around. Now, they only have one win on the month. So my guess is Nashville probably wins this tonight. But Winnipeg's been proving me wrong a lot lately. They are 12-8-1, regardless of how they got there. They are 12-8-1. So for Winnipeg, they can keep it up. They could be a surprise playoff team this year. And considering all of the defensemen they lost and the cap issues they had and signing Connor and Laine late and Byfuglien decides he's not going to play, considering all that, if these guys make the playoffs, that is absolutely huge. It says a ton about the coach. It says a ton about the team and their ability to dig down and find new ways to win hockey games. So we'll see if this story continues tonight or if Nashville says that's a nice story, but we're going to go ahead and win this game tonight. That being said, I now need to change boards. Next up, starting at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. We have two games starting at that time. The first one I'm going to take a look at is Chicago at home against Carolina. Carolina's 12-7-1. Chicago's 9-7-4, and they're climbing their way out. And honestly, right now, winning the way they are, Chicago looks pretty good. 8-3-1 is the record for Carolina in October. 4-4 is the record in November. Whereas in October, Chicago was 3-6-2, and in November they've been 6-1-2. They can score a lot of goals. The depth doesn't show up yet because they had problems scoring early on, but it's there. Now, on the Carolina side, Hamilton, 9 goals, 13 assists. Svechnikov liked that total so much he copied it. 9 goals, 13 assists for him. Aho, 9 goals and 6 assists. Haula, who's going to be out for a while, 8 goals and 3 assists. And Teravainen, 5 goals, 14 assists. On the Chicago side, Patrick Kane, who has been absolutely fantastic for about 3.5 weeks now. 11 goals, 15 assists for him. Saad, 6 goals, 6 assists. DeBrincat, 5 goals, 11 assists. Kubalik, 5 goals, 4 assists. And Kirby Dach with 5 goals, 4 assists. It is not a coincidence that when Patrick Kane starts playing better, the Chicago Blackhawks start winning games. The Blackhawks have had a nice little run going here. And for Carolina, well, we'll see if they can go above 500 on the month of November. It's been a very up and down month for Carolina in general. But this is where having a really good October, getting well above 500, getting to that 8-3-1 record in October, it does give you a bit of a cushion where you can have a mediocre month, stay in a playoff position, and as long as you pick it up that next month, you're fine. So for Carolina, we'll see whether or not they can turn things around. And for Chicago, they've already turned it around. Can they keep it going in that direction? Can they push for a playoff spot? Does the Central actually start living up to its reputation in the month of November? And is it going to be the Central that has 5 teams in the playoffs instead of the Pacific, which is what we were looking at just a couple weeks ago? Could very well happen. I could see it. It's happened before. Next up, Vancouver in against Dallas. So this is an 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific start. Vancouver 10-7-4. Dallas 11-8-2. They met in Vancouver. I watched that game. It was a good game for Dallas. I would be very surprised, honestly, if Dallas doesn't win this game. I think they're playing better hockey, and I think the recent records show it's really not that close. Vancouver's 8-3-1 in October. In November, 2-4-3. And winning 2 out of 9 in November, that's just not good enough. And tonight's the time to turn it around if you're Vancouver. And it's going to be tough because while Dallas was 5-8-1 in October, they've been 6-0-1 in November. And they're coming off of that road trip through Western Canada where they won all 3 games. Just very, very impressive road trip for them. And Dallas, like you can see it, 7 games in November. They haven't lost in regulation, and they've won 6 of them. Yeah, it's there. Now, when we look at scoring depth, both of these teams surprisingly have a lot of it. So when you're looking for players with 5 or more goals, both teams have got you covered there. Brock Besser, 9 goals, 11 assists. Pettersson, 8 goals, 17 assists. Miller, 8 goals, 12 assists for JT. Horvat, 6 goals, 9 assists. Virtanen, 6 goals and 3 assists. Sutter, 5 goals and 3 assists. Yes, Jake Virtanen right now is on pace for 20 goals. So if he ends up scoring, right now it'll be, I guess, 23, 24 goals. They played 21 games, so it's not that easy to figure it out. But 23 goals, let's just say 23. If he gets 23 goals, that's pretty fantastic. On the Dallas side, Rope Hintz, who, as far as I know, he's still out for a while. 9 goals, 2 assists. I say that, and then we'll get news this morning. He's back. Radulov, 6 goals, 5 assists. Sagan, 5 goals, 11 assists. He's been picking it up lately. Heiskanen, 5 goals, 9 assists. Pavelski, 5 goals and 7 assists. And Radek Faksa, 5 goals and 5 assists for him. Pretty solid numbers overall for Radek Faksa. He's good on the faceoffs, and he's a good defensive forward, so whatever offensively you get out of him is a bonus. All right, moving along. Colorado in against the Calgary Flames. So this starts at 6 o'clock. Notice these games are staggered out well enough that, I'm gonna be doing my best to keep track of everything. It's going to be a challenge. Calgary at home against Colorado, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern. 12-6-2 Colorado, 10-10-3 Calgary. Calgary's kind of in a panic, and I get why. The difference is I think Calgary can pull themselves out of their slump. I'm not sure with Toronto. Calgary does not feel anywhere near as dysfunctional as Toronto, and whether that's media frenzy kind of stuff or what it is, it just feels like things aren't quite as dire for Calgary. And I don't think the pressure on Calgary is there to win right away. Like, they don't have to win the cup this year or they're done. And with the Leafs, it kind of feels like they are. So for the Avalanche, they were 8-2-2 in October. Everybody gets hurt, and yet they're 4-4 in October. They're keeping their head above water. If they can continue to do this, with missing their goaltending, missing their scoring, missing everything, this is fantastic for them. On the Calgary side, they were 7-6-2 in October. They've been 3-4-1 in November. And it's been the exact same record in November as the Toronto one that's right next to them, but it doesn't feel like, to me, that Calgary's in quite as much trouble. Now, on the Colorado side of things, scoring depth, there's a lot of it. McKinnon, 13 goals, 16 assists. Donskoy, 9 goals, 5 assists. Burakovsky's been fantastic. 8 goals, 8 assists, 16 points. Kadri, 7 goals, 8 assists. Makar, 5 goals, 17 assists, 22 points. And yet when I talk about, the Calder should go to him, I get people saying, it's way too early. What are you talking about, Calder? Rookie of the year, right? Yeah, 22 points in 20 games as a defenseman. He's on pace for about 90 points. Yeah. Rantanen, 5 goals, 7 assists, 12 points. He's on the board despite the fact he's missed most of the season. But again, Cale Makar, anybody who doubts he should be Rookie of the Year, they normally don't after they've seen him play for Colorado. He is simply one of the best defensemen in the league. Usually with a rookie, you look and you go, there's potential. He's going to be great. He has some good nights. He has some off nights. Makar, he's just fantastic. On the Calgary front, Tkachuk, 10 goals, 10 assists. He was very outspoken after their most recent loss to Vegas. We'll see how he plays tonight and whether or not he charges into whatever goaltender Colorado throws in the net tonight. Whether it's Werner or it's Bebo, maybe Patrick Waugh comes out of retirement to play just for tonight. I don't know. Lindholm, 10 goals, 7 assists for the Flames. Monahan and Gaudreau both have 5 goals. Gaudreau has 13 assists for 18 points. Monahan, 12 assists for 17 points. And that's really a story. Calgary is having a lot of problems. And their big star players, they're not scoring the way that they're supposed to. So for Calgary, there's a lot of work still that needs to be done. We'll see how things turn out for them. All right, next up. Toronto and Vegas. This starts at 7 o'clock my time, 10 o'clock Eastern. It's the only game starting at 7, and then there's one at 7:30, which is on the final board that I'll put up for you people. Now, Toronto, 9-9-4. It's not great, but you look over here at Calgary's 10-10-3. So, anyways, on the other side, you have the 10-9-3 Vegas Golden Knights. And it's interesting that Vegas has a record that's not totally dissimilar to Toronto's, and yet we were in panic stations here and not here. October, 6-5-3 was the record for Toronto. In November, they're 3-4-1, so just kind of mediocre. On the Vegas front, they were 8-5-1 in October. They've been 2-4-2 in November. Poor record in November. They've had problems keeping leads. They've had problems at home. They did beat the living you-know-what out of Calgary, but they always beat the living you-know-what out of Calgary. So this game against Toronto, I think, is a better indicator of where they're at. Now, when we look at scoring depth, Toronto does have scoring depth. They also have injuries to that scoring depth. Matthews, 14 goals, 13 assists. I have to say that Matthews with 27 points so far this year, he's on pace for about 100. He's on pace for about 50 goals. and yet everything's just DEFCON 4 in Toronto. Matthews is a pretty darn good player. He's having a really, really good year. Nylander, 8 goals, 9 assists. I keep hearing about how Nylander doesn't bring anything to the team. I would say 17 points in 22 games. That's bringing something to the team. And I think if they panic right now and if they trade out Nylander for not enough back, I think that would be the worst panic move you could make. Tavares, 6 goals, 8 assists. They do need more from Tavares. Kapanen, 6 goals, 6 assists. Johnson, 5 goals, 7 assists. I mentioned recently I think he takes penalties at inopportune times. And Kerfoot with 5 goals and 3 assists. Now, on the Vegas side of things, the scoring depth is there as well. Smith, 10 goals, 7 assists. Stone, 9 goals, 10 assists for him, 19 points. Carlson, 8 goals, 15 assists for 23 points. Pacioretty, 8 goals, 12 assists for him. Stastny, 6 goals, 4 assists. They do want more from Stastny than they've got so far this year. Marchessault, 5 goals and 10 assists for him. And in my last preview, I talked about how they were starting to look like an expansion team, and they weren't getting scoring from the blue line, so they beat up the Flames 6-0, and Schmidt threw in 4 helpers. So, I guess you're welcome, Vegas. I guess I did that. I don't know. Anyways, this should be a fun one. I do think Vegas probably wins this game, and I think if Vegas wins this game, especially if it's like 4-1, 5-1, something like that, the screaming and yelling in Toronto will only get louder. And we'll see what happens with that one. But anyways, I now need to change boards. And the last game of the night is the Oilers in against the San Jose Sharks. The Oilers are 13-6-1. San Jose's 10-10-1. And what San Jose is trying to do tonight is something we did not expect a couple weeks ago. They're trying to go above 500. They're trying to have more wins than losses in regulation. Now, month of October, Oilers 9-4-1. November 4-2-2. So they've followed up a very good October with a pretty solid November as well, have those Oilers. Whereas San Jose's had to work a little bit harder in November. They had a 4-8-1 October. They've had a 6-2 November. So if they can win tonight and go to 7-2, we can start talking about San Jose and which playoff position they may very well end up in. Now, scoring depth, San Jose has a minor advantage there, but the scoring, Draisaitl, 16 goals, 27 assists, 43 points. 43 points in 20 games. That's insanity right there. That's just not right. McDavid, 14 goals, 26 assists, 40 points. So, it doesn't matter who's better between McDavid and Draisaitl. We can have that debate all day. The fact they have 83 points put together already, a quarter of the way into the season, is insane. James Neal, 12 goals, 3 assists. Most of those goals, of course, were early. Cassian, 7 goals, 8 assists. He's having a career year. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, 5 goals and 10 assists for him on the Edmonton front. Now, on the San Jose side of things, Evander Kane, 12 goals, 6 assists. Tomas Hertl, 10 goals, 11 assists. LeBanc, 6 goals, 6 assists. Has been a big part of them turning it around. His scoring has picked up. Burns, 5 goals, 14 assists. Meyer, 5 goals, 8 assists. His scoring's picked up as well. And Barclay Goodrow is also on the board with 5 goals, 5 assists. This ends the night at 7:30 Pacific, 10:30 Eastern. It'll run till late. For anybody on the East Coast, it'll run late for me as well. But it's going to be a fun night. These nights are kind of crazy, and I do follow as much as I can. The difference between the early part of the season and now, I don't stress on it. I don't stress on it. What I catch, and what I don't, I don't. The one thing I'm wondering is whether or not I've cut out enough number magnets to cover all 13 games, or if I'm just going to have to use some on the early boards and then just use them again on the late boards. Anyways, there you go. It's going to be a fun night in hockey. Let me know your winners in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support, for everything you've done to help this channel along the way. I will talk to you again soon.